I came across to a very disturbing investigative report from the BBC. I believe that at this point in time, it's very important to talk about it and in the Western world and in Latin America to understand what is happening in Middle East, especially in Iran, and how is the Iranian influence over the world. Firstly, the investigative reports talk about a child, a female child, that has been brutally killed by Iranian police force, the moral police of Iran, in 2022. But before arriving to analyze what happened to this child, Nika Shakarami, as her name, I hope to pronounce it well, I would like to have a brief reflection, a brief analysis over what Iran is, how it became one of the most brutal regimes all over the world, and what does it mean geopolitically. Also, it's important to analyze the laces that the Iranian government has with some Latin American country, the Argentina at the time of Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, and especially Venezuela, and maybe other Latin American countries. What does it mean, this relation, these laces that are unifying, putting together Latin America and Iran? Finally, I will talk about what happened to this poor child and what does really mean, or what is the real meaning of a patriarch society. So, let's start with Iran. Iran had a king that is called Shah person, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, and it was a modern governor, and it was Western oriented, and at the time Iran was the majority, the religion of Iran was Islamic, it was a Muslim country, but the government of Iran at that time, it was a secular government. So, Iran has seen the transformation from what we know as a secular government through the current reality that is a dogmatic religion country. So it is quite important to understand this transformation. What does it mean in simple words? Well, at the time of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, people could walk in the street and everyone dressed as they liked. Right now, the law that is enforced and implemented in Iran is mainly the Sharia law, the religious law of the Quran. So the Sharia law, we talk about, just to understand, it's more than almost 1,400 years old. So is a middle-age law, a religious middle-age law. So it's very repressive, especially for women. So the country, from an almost free society, turned out to be one of the most brutal regimes on earth. And it happened with the revolution, the Islamic revolution, that was led by Ayatollah Khomeini at the end of the 70s, in 79, that brought the Iran that we know today. So, it's important to mention that after that, the most basic freedom in the Iranian society has been cancelled. And the initial and basic freedom is the religious freedom. Iran, it was also a nest of many different religions, especially pre-Islamic religions. Now, the Iranian society is almost 100% Islamic. So, if you had another religion in Iran, you had two choices, to flee the country or to convert to Islam. Very easy. Otherwise, you would have been severely repressed. That's the reality of an extreme religious country as it is nowadays Iran, and already for about more than 40 years. 40 years of a brutal regime. So, this is the Iranian situation, the Iranian context. Geopolitically is extremely important. Why? Because it's one of the main founders of terrorism around the world. We know Hamas in Israel and also Hezbollah in Lebanon are terrorist groups that are financed by Iran, but also the Houthis in Yemen, and not only. The laces of Iran arrives also in Latin America. For example, Argentina suffered two brutal terrorist attacks during the 80s, and it seems that they had been financed by the Iranian government. And Now we come to the third point. So just to conclude, from a geopolitical point of view, it is very important, the role of Iran, because it's one of the main founders of different terrorist groups around the globe. But then we come to Latin America. To Latin America, the Iranian position is also quite difficult to understand and to visualize perfectly. First, the Iranian government had laces with the Argentinian government. Why? Despite of being the country that financed the two terrorist attacks on Israel in the 80s, for example, in 2015, Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, the president of Argentina, signed a commission of the truth with the Iranian government, with the Iranian president. So it looks a little bit bizarre to see how an Iranian politician who's the one that financed the terrorist attack, and that is the country that protect the terrorist that implemented the attack, sign an agreement of the truth with the country that suffered the attack, Argentina in this case. That's quite bizarre, if you think about it well. So what were the relationship with the Argentinian left, the Peronist Argentina, the Kirchner Argentina, but not only the Kirchner and Cristina Fernández, but other government were quite accommodating with Iran. So only now with the new president, there is a clear position in Argentina. But what were the relationships between all this Argentinian party and the Iranian government? What was in between? That's the main question that we should ask to ourselves. Then we move to Venezuela, but there are also other countries where there are some Iranian presence. For example, Bolivia. For example, Mexico, maybe. I don't know. So the Iranian situation is more complex than what we think in Latin America. In Venezuela, the major ally of Iran is Nicolás Maduro in Venezuela. So at this point, we should ask ourselves what relationship has Venezuela with Iran? That's the main point. What are the relationship between the two countries? That's very bizarre. At the same time, we should ask why there are a lot of organizations around the world that are worried of what Bukele, the president of El Salvador, implemented in order to fight the criminals, and there are so few critics against Iran. That's another interesting question that we should ask to ourselves. So, what are the relationship and what are the reason of this relationship, for example, between Latin American countries and Iran? I don't know. As I said, another important question. But finally, we arrive to Nika Shakarami. She was a 16 years old girl that was protesting because Masha Amini, she was another girl, she was a 20 years old girl from Iranian Kurdistan that had been killed by the moral police during some protest in 2022. So, after the killing of Masha Amini, there were more protests, and this poor girl ended in the hand of the moral police, branch probably of the Revolutionary Guard. These are the people we're talking about. People, or better to say, criminals. That's the word. So, they took the poor girl in a van. There were few men, around 3-4 men. They abused her, you can imagine, and they beat her until up to death. After a few days, it was discovered the body of the poor girl. A child, a 16 years old girl is a child that had been sexually abused by the Iranian moral police and beaten to death. That's the story of the Nika Shakarami. It's very important to talk about that for few reasons. The first one, in the Western world, we have feminists, trans-feminists, everybody that is protesting, and they protest about a supposed patriarchal society of the Western world, and they do not recognize what happened in Middle East. In that particular case, I would understand if there were march of protest in front of the Iranian embassies, but nobody talks. People are not honest, especially the groups that are protesting. They are quite dishonest because they should recognize what happened to Iran and what happened to the Iranian women. And Iran, it is not the only country. Islamic country with the Sharia law, women suffer terrible. But nobody recognized that. Nobody protest for those women. And this group, usually this leftist Western group, it seems that they consider inferior women the one that live in those countries. And in my opinion, it is quite unfair. At the same time, it is important for Europe, for the United States, and for Latin America to understand when there are people from other culture that arrive to the Western world, that is important to integrate. And what really does it mean, integration? It means that the people that arrive should accept the culture and the religion of that place, but not impose his own religion as his own culture. Right now, it's very difficult for the West society to share its value and its religion with the newcomers. The newcomers should accept that they arrive in a Western society, and at the same time, they should accept the Western rules. That's extremely important, but it seems difficult to arrive to that point. So I consider that this case is very important, especially for what it means. I hope it interested you, and I'm looking forward to have another presentation and to have you in my next presentation. Thank you.